Going to take you live to Canberra now and a media conference with Greens leader Bob Brown.
Australia. And then I'd be happy to talk about that legislation or any other matters of the day that you might like to bring up. So I'll hand across to Larissa.
Thanks. Thanks, everyone. Look, we're just about to introduce a new bill into the Senate. This is a long-anticipated bill, and it's one that the community will really welcome. It's finally to give the federal government some power to look at the main problem with coal seam gas mining, which is water. Now, under our current environmental laws, the Federal Environment Minister isn't even allowed to consider the impact on water from coal seam gas, which is patently ridiculous. So this bill corrects that anomaly and would give this important national issue of groundwater and food security the national attention that it deserves. So we're looking forward to the support from all other parties for this very sensible and much needed bill. And clearly this is something that the community has been calling for a long time. It's not just folk in the bush, this is folk in the city as well. We all want to support good protection for water resources, which underpin much of our food producing ability. Now, obviously in Australia we don't have a lot of good food producing land, and it is so important that we protect it from other incompatible land uses and that we protect the water resources that our food security relies on. So it's with great pride that the Greens deliver today on an election commitment to amend our environmental laws to include water as one important aspect that needs and deserves federal protection.
Should there be a moratorium on coal seam gas exploration until this is all sorted out, until the science is a little more settled?
Look, the Greens have been calling for a moratorium because we simply don't know enough about the long-term impacts of coal seam gas on our underground water resources. And it's not just us asking for this either. The CSIRO and the National Water Commission have both expressed concern at the lack of information about hydrology impacts of coal seam gas. Now, independent Tony Windsor has today said that he thinks that there should be more studies done about the catchment effects of coal seam gas, and we completely agree. And that is, of course, consistent with what we've been calling for, which is a moratorium until we have that decent information about the water impacts of coal seam gas. So we're very pleased that Tony Windsor has come up with this good and consistent suggestion, which backs what the Greens have been calling for, which is, of course, a moratorium. We simply don't know enough about coal seam gas to know that it's safe. We need to press pause until we can be sure that it's not threatening our groundwater and our food security.
Senator Brown, do you think that the action that Tony Windsor's taking will scuttle the mining tax?
I don't think it should do. The government's got the wherewithal to be able to take into account the concerns that Larissa Waters and Tony Windsor have been expressing about coal seam gas. It's just pure common sense. You make sure that you're going to secure both water and food resources and biodiversity before the impact of mining proceeds. So it's just a common sense approach, and Tony Windsor's obviously using the leverage of the mining tax to get some government action. The problem is that both the big parties don't put the environment on the agenda, but the environment these days means keeping water clean, it means food production, and of course it means clean air as well, and it's very much in the public mind. So if that's the way it's got to go, to get government action on putting a trigger on water into the Environment Protection Act, or getting catchment assessments of the hazard of corporations like Santos proceeding with coal seam gas exploration without the adequate studies being done, without the potential impact being fully assessed, so be it.
If Mr Windsor's concerns translate to amendments in return for his support for the mining tax, would you back those amendments? Or?
Oh, well, we need to see the amendments, if there are to be amendments. We have our own amendments, as you'll be aware, on for example, extending the tax to gold, which would bring in some $1.8 billion over the next decade, and that in turn can be a revenue base for funding the sort of proposal that Mr Windsor has put forward. But it may be that the government will work out some other arrangement which doesn't involve amendments with Tony Windsor. We'll wait and see. But yes, if there's amendments coming forward which are going to move towards the proposals that Larissa Waters has in making sure water resources are safe before you get into the business of burrowing into the ground for coal seam gas, this process that'll last a decade or two and then they leave, potentially with contamination that can't be relieved for an eon to come, then it's something we'll be motivated to support. But of course we want to see the detail.
3 parts. Greens leader Bob Brown there. Earlier we heard from Greens Senator Larissa Waters announcing that the party is about to submit a bill to Parliament to try and protect water reserves in Australia. She said in doing so it was fulfilling a promise, a pre-election promise to amend environmental laws in this country that protect such resources. She said the Greens also supported a call from Tony Windsor for a moratorium on coal seam gas while the science is investigated further. For continuing coverage of that news conference, simply press red on your remote. Look for our dedicated channel on Sky News Multiview. Time for sport now with Sam.